Good morning. It is Friday, January 5th at 9 a.m. For the half hour that we have before the floor, we are going to talk about H546, which I believe Representative Canfield is the lead sponsor on, and Rebecca Semrau from the Tax Department is going to talk us through it.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to 2024 and Ways and Means, Rebecca.
Yes, it's great to be here. For the record, Rebecca Semrau, Deputy Commissioner, Tax Department. Yeah, exciting to be here in 2024. Just on a personal note, I'm only going to be spending about half the session with you all because I'm very pregnant with twins right now. That'll, yes, it's twins. Yeah, but first time doing all of it, so it's all I'll ever know. But yes,
Yeah.
I'm feeling great. Yeah, this is like remarkably safe space compared to like the chaos of getting my house and life ready. So yeah, so sometime before town meeting day, I'll be fading out, but you will all be very well supported, familiar with Commissioner Bolio, who loves this committee dearly. And we also have Abby Shepherd on the tax team now. So another familiar face.
Okay.
Yes.
People.
Yes, as are you with our former colleague, Kirby Keaton. So yeah, all worked out beautifully. Yeah, solid swap. Great. So thanks so much for the opportunity to speak to this bill, and thanks to our sponsor, Rep. Canfield, H546 sponsor, for bringing forward these proposals that we can, consider together. We're excited to work with the legislature on these from the tax department. So we'll start kind of like on the more boring technical side and blossom into some policy stuff that's a little less boring, I think. Maybe it's all interesting. And I do have a document that's available on the committee page, just kind of like summarizing each of these proposals. So feel free to follow along. I apologize, I didn't bring a device.
I'm going to try to pull it up, but I apologize.
Okay, great. It should be very easy. Short document, slow scroll. Great. So the first proposal we have in H546 is a correction to some appropriation language in section 32 VSA section 4041A. This is going to feel very familiar because it's actually a rerun from last year. This technical provision was unfortunately kind of like lost in the shuffle when we moved some of our technical provisions over to H480, which became Act 68, the reappraisal bill. I didn't notice it get lost in there, but I don't want to preempt anyone's judgment this year, but everyone was very supportive of this last year. The background is that
It really was. We just lost it in the shuffle.
yeah. Thank you for confirming. So just a little context. In 2018, the legislature made a lot of changes to the ed fund's composition, most notably eliminating the general fund transfer and bringing in some new revenue sources. And one of, kind of like the lesser changes among those was eliminating the equalization and reappraisal account from the general fund and from the education fund, I apologize, and having that money come from the general fund. So every year subsequently, the legislature has appropriated that money from the general fund, even though there's this old language referencing the ed fund in section 4041A, and that's just the language we want to correct. So it matches current legislative practice and stops bringing confusion to our respective finance offices every year. We try to figure out why it's in there. So I'd love support on that again this year and keep an eye on it for as long as I'm here. I'm sure we all will. So that'd be great. The second one, building in excitement, I would say, is language to update the 5412 reimbursement mechanism. And this is a section of statute, which we've also talked about in prior years in this committee, that has to do with, it's a reimbursement mechanism for a situation where a town loses grand list value after an appeal or a court action. So like the scenario here would be that a property value is challenged successfully in court. and then like through a settlement or a court decision. And then the town is responsible for paying back the taxpayer for any overpayment of taxes, based on that old value. And the town is also on the hook from their own coffers for the ed fund portion of that overpayment. And so this reimbursement mechanism will reimburse towns for that ed fund portion, so they're not, digging into their own budgets after a court situation like that. But there's some pretty specific and strict requirements to make sure the town followed best practice in the court proceedings, or that the settlement was consistent with fair market value. So many of those make sense. It's a really solid program, but the statute is I would say a little too specific when it comes to a value loss that resulted from a judicial decision. It specifies that there can be no further right of appeal in order for the town to have met best practice. Maybe you're anticipating the issue there. So the new language would let the PVR director actually bring some discretion to this situation if the PVR director finds that decision was consistent with fair market value, and appealing beyond that, wouldn't really make sense. You can waive that requirement that it has to be appealed to the highest level. And part of the reason why this came up recently is because this past year, the department had to deny a reimbursement application, even though the town got a ruling from a superior court. It was consistent with fair market value, and going beyond that to the Supreme Court wouldn't have been advisable, by anyone. But the only way to get the reimbursement would have been to take the extra steps to appeal that to the Supreme Court, which would have just basically been only for the purpose of getting the reimbursement and probably wasting all their reimbursement money on legal fees kind of thing.
So Rebecca, we talked a lot, even last year, about the challenge of towns not having the legal resources to be appealing as much as might be in the best interests of the grand list, and settling too early basically because they can't afford the legal coverage for themselves. And so I'm wondering, in offering discretion, how we're going to be able to balance that challenge.
So I think this program operating successfully in a way that, will support as many municipalities as possible who are proceeding rationally through, or with best practice through a court proceeding is it's a really strong tool for supporting towns there. The program doesn't go as far as reimbursing legal fees, but when a town is considering defending a value, it's nice if they can look ahead and say okay, this is, we know we're going to follow best practices, and we know that if something goes awry or if we end up settling, lower than what the current value is, we'll have, the state support to reimburse the ed fund portion. And I think it's an important part of, this reimbursement mechanism is an important part of towns, tools and decision-making of how to defend those values. But it's
I guess I wonder if
program.
Fair market value is enough of a protective mechanism to make sure that they are going far enough still.
I mean, fair market value is what we're trying to get to. Yeah. So if that's where a court's decision has landed and it is determined by the PVR director, because PVR isn't reviewing every municipality's, value for every property. That's not how our system works today. So this is, an opportunity for the, PVR director to look at it and, weigh in on whether the ultimate judgment was consistent with fair market value. And if it's not, then we would say we should be appealing it to a different court. We should be really trying to get to fair market value.
And Julia, you had a question?
I think I'm good.
Okay, sorry.
Good.
Yeah. I'd say that's the gold standard there. So that'd be a great edit. And this program, part of the reason why it's familiar is we talked about this in our commercial property appraisal report, I think now 2 or 3 years ago, and we ended up expanding the cap on this program recently to allowing more towns to take advantage in a year where, one town's appeal might have eaten up a smaller appropriation. So I feel like it's one edit away from being Perfect. That's it. Great. So any other questions on that one? I'm happy to pause and take questions at any point. Great. The next one, super thrilling, is the annual link up to the federal tax statutes. This committee should be very familiar with this by now, but happy to, it does have weird effective dates, like happy to answer any questions about that.
With Kirby, yes.
Great.
Yesterday.
Awesome. Perfect. So you
Do you have
probably,
any flags though, for us?
no, consistent. We don't think anything too exciting is happening this year. But appreciate the link up for sure. Okay, so getting into more of the policy space, we have a proposal regarding the renter credit program. It's actually a proposal to increase the renter credit income eligibility thresholds for the coming year. So just a little background, you all might remember that effective for tax year 2021, there was a big reform of the former renter rebate program to the current renter credit program. Many wins in that reform. Roommates that aren't related to each other no longer have to share one renter credit between the two of them. They don't have to talk to each other about their super sensitive income information and share social security numbers, things like that. Renters don't have to physically get a landlord certificate from their landlords anymore. The landlords submit them in a very streamlined way to the department. So the whole filing process is very streamlined. And then, more significantly, in the former program, we had declining enrollment every year because the eligibility caps were these hard income limits and people's income would grow beyond the cap year over year. So we're having trouble, keeping the participation in the program that we would anticipate because of those hard income caps. So in the new program, the income thresholds are adjusted every year. They're based on federal housing data from HUD. That incorporates not only the size of your household, but also your county. And it, really solves that issue of folks like growing their income out of eligibility. So those are all the great things that have happened in the program. But one issue is that the program has been consistently budgeted at $9.5 million, that appropriation level, for years now. And that's even before the reform. The reform was designed to be revenue neutral. So, trying to hit that 9.5 million mark. But we've continually spent below that. And our analysis at the tax department that was done this summer determined that the natural state of the program, once you consider the impacts of all the pandemic era housing subsidies, which I believe went through June of 2023. Once you control for all the subsidy that was in the market, we think the natural state is more like 7.4 million a year. What's helpful is that it's been really stable at that level year over year based on this analysis, but about 2 million short of where we want to be consistently spending. But this kind of gives us a cool opportunity, which is to expand the program without having to adjust the appropriation at all.
That's great. 2 questions. One, did you do any joint forecasting with JFO?
No, but Jake is eager to work with our JFO colleagues to go over that analysis. Yeah.
And then other question is, when there are a lot of different ways we could expand. So why this one?
Yeah. So
It's a great idea. Absolutely.
Great question. So I'll just go through quickly what the proposal is here, and then we can talk about kind of some of the pros and cons there. So we're proposing changing the eligibility threshold. Well, I guess I'll just start by saying another benefit of this program over the old one is the old one had these income eligibility cliffs, and we have this nice graceful slope from full eligibility at HUD's extremely low income level all the way down to what's currently very low income, which is 50% of the area median income for your county. So what this proposal is to extend the end of that long graceful slope out to 65% of area median income. And our modeling shows that that would be, getting us right to that 9.5% $9.5 million appropriation. So that's why that 65% was chosen. At that level, you get about 3,000 additional renters coming into the program, like people that now are getting captured by that slope. And also you get about 4,000 people that were currently on the slope getting a bigger credit, just because the slope like goes out a little bit farther. So, and that's all with this revenue neutral proposal. Another way to get to revenue neutrality would just be, straight up increasing the percentage that existing recipients are getting. We found, I think that it was increasing it from 10% of your fair market value rent to 13% of your fair market value rent would also kind of achieve that revenue neutrality. But we were excited about the proposal that would also bring more renters into the program. So kind of like that strategy better internally, but certainly open to discuss more and model more with the committee.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And there's no inflator built into the size of the program. It's just.
There is no inflator built into the size of the program, correct? Yeah, but
It's interesting given that rents go up almost every year for most people.
Yeah, but those HUD eligibility levels move too. So that's actually, that's an interesting question that I would love for you all to ask Jake Feldman.
Okay. Will do.
Yeah, but that's one, it just seems like a great opportunity. We're really excited to bring that to you all this year, especially given the budget realities. Yes.
Definitely. Okay.
Maybe you addressed this before I got here, but 50% area median income. Can you explain what is the area median income? Is the whole state the same, or is it?
No, I can do my best there. These are county level measures that are produced by at the federal level every year by HUD. Chittenden County has their own scale. Renters there are measured differently than renters in Washington County, et cetera.
And that's used across huge swaths of state government?
Yes.
Representative Anthony, you have a question? Okay. Carol, yeah.
Now that you say it's used across huge swaths of state government, I would like to hear about how that looks in Vermont.
Area median income?
Yeah, just to see, is it really reflecting what's going on?
Can you follow up with Carol about that?
I think part of our renter credit, we have like a renter credit calculator online. I think these tables are available as part of the calculator that taxpayers can use to anticipate their rent. When you pick your county, you can look at the table of area median income for different, and this is like for different family sizes too within the county. So it looks like a big matrix. So it's very tailored. But yeah, I think that'd be really interesting for folks to look in their districts and see what those figures are like.
Thanks, and we'll, Jake and JFO can do some collaborating and then we can have them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Off to just see graphs of how this impacts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it forward.
Yeah. So the last more policy proposal I'll talk about today is an elimination of the $15 late fee for property tax credits. So basically, statute requires that a $15 late fee is applied to any property tax credit that's filed after the kind of like main deadline, April 15th every year. And this proposal is to eliminate that fee. I'd say like the reasoning why we're excited about this is like threefold, I would say. First of all, there's just some dissonance between the rationale and the statute and how the fee is kind of operating on the ground. The statute expressly states that the fee is to compensate towns for the cost of issuing an adjusted homestead property tax bill. And that's because you can imagine a situation where you file a property tax credit late after that April deadline. Maybe the town gets that information later than their first billing cycle because of that delay, and they have to reissue a bill that incorporates your property tax credit. And that was certainly more common in the old world before the tax department's VTax system and a lot of efficiency improvements, but we've really improved efficiency so much that many of these late filed property tax credit claims, we are able to process just at the same time as we're processing the timely ones. And they're all contained in the very first file we ever send to towns, which is on June 30th. And so a town can't even, experience the difference between a late filed property tax credit claim and a timely filed one. They have many of them in time to do their first cycle of billing. So there's no rebilling occurs, but yet, the taxpayer has been dinged this $15, which is also dinged this $15 for rebilling that hasn't happened. So
Have you talked to the league or towns or clerks about this?
yeah, we have talked to the league about it. I mean, it's like, I don't think it's anyone's like favorite proposal when it involves like taking impacting a municipal revenue, but it I think it'd be great to talk to them, for the committee to talk to them too. Let me just talk about the scale a little bit, and that might give a sense. They're aware that we're bringing this forward. So that dissonance doesn't feel great, but it's not anyone's fault. We're just really, really fast these days at the department, and the statutes from a different world when we were a little slower. But also just anticipating a question that might come up, we're also not concerned about a behavioral impact here. This $15 fee isn't really much of a stick for a taxpayer, especially when you think about the bigger context that the property tax credit claim is in for, a taxpayer filing. It's on the exact same form as the homestead declaration, and that homestead declaration has a very hard deadline of April 15th. And I say that's hard because the penalty for filing after April 15th is pretty significant. It can be up to 8% of your total property tax bill, which is a lot. So, anyone who, that is like a real stick that certainly drives behavior. So people are very motivated to get that homestead declaration in by April 15th. And the property tax credit is part of that process, both on the form and often if you're going through, vendor software yourself. Those are all, combined right there in the vendor software. So it's like, it makes a lot of sense for folks just to file timely if they're filing themselves. And that's generally people file those property tax credit claims right along with the homestead declaration. That's the vast majority of the cases.
This is not a conversation for now, but would love to have a conversation sometime this month about, I keep on hearing more and more about folks who are not filing homestead declarations, who, in some cases to lower their property tax bill, and in some cases because they don't know and they would actually are eligible for an income adjustment and just don't know because they don't file income taxes. So they're not being sort of prompted to do the homestead. And so in both of those scenarios, just curious your thoughts about how we could bring more people into the process. There isn't time to talk about it now, but just curious
Yeah. I think it's a really important conversation. I will say that we have we do robust outreach for folks that do file a homestead, but don't have the property tax credit claim attached, because that's like a population we can kind of see and anticipate, or really looks like you're eligible for this. We really want to make sure folks are getting their credits. But it's tricky if you're not filing your homestead declaration in the first place, for sure.
In my memory was that we moved the penalty over to October. Or am I wrong on that?
So there was work done on this in this committee this year, which was great also, which is moving. It didn't affect this $15 late fee. That still exists for any property tax credit claim filed after April 15th. But the change that was made last year is that we moved the hard drop dead deadline from October 15th out to March of the following year.
Okay.
And that extra time is available for anyone who has filed a homestead declaration by that hard October.
Leave the hard date for the homestead.
Yeah, the homestead. I mean, it's very important for towns that date remains.
I hear you.
Yeah, I'm sure as I'm sure you're familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remains October 15th, for their processes. I'll just say finally, a big, just like frustration with this fee that we have internally is that there's a very much like legal above board way to avoid this fee, which almost all, if not all, tax preparers use when preparing property tax credit claims, which is to file a timely property tax credit claim with a placeholder income before that April 15th deadline. And then, when it comes closer to the October extension deadline for personal income tax, they'll amend that property tax credit claim with their client's real income. And that process often does result in rebilling from the town, but because there was never a late filed property tax credit claim, there's no $15 fee incurred. The town doesn't get that little $15 reimbursement for their work rebilling. So that's just like another kind of frustrating dissonance that oftentimes the fee is charged on a taxpayer that isn't actually adding any burden to the system, whereas there's another mechanism that's used very frequently that doesn't generate the same fee. So that's like part of the rationale for proposing to eliminate it. There's no state level fiscal impact, but as you can imagine, towns do net a small amount of revenue from these fees every year. Actually, it's calculated in the form of a reduction of their eventual education fund liability. It's like all done like spreadsheets in the background. But using tax year 2022, for example, all of these fees across the whole state total to $88,000. So it is like a pretty small pool of money we're talking about. Average impact per town was about $350, and the median impact was about $225. So relatively small potatoes.
To explain that part, before you started talking about the 88,000 numbers, it was very interesting to me, and I just would like you to repeat that.
Yeah. Oh, so we at tax, we maintain a kind of like a sheet along with all the property tax credit information that goes to towns that counts how many of those were late filed. So it's basically like $15 times the number of late filed property tax credit claims, is the kind of like pot of money averaging $350 that each town will get. And that gets netted out of their eventual payment into the ed fund rather than cutting a check.
Ed fund actually lose money?
No, because because the person that's paying the fee is a property tax credit claim recipient. So their property tax credit, their income sensitivity is getting reduced by $15, which is a credit to the ed fund. And then the town is getting that $15 back as a demerit from the ed fund. So it all nets out. But great question. Yeah, no ed fund impact.
For me, the interesting part of your narrative was that it seems the existing system seems to advantage some people who use preparers because they're clever enough to have filed, even if they have to adjust it later, they avoid the fee. Whereas people who don't use a preparer get stuck with the fee because they probably don't understand to avoid it. So if there's some way to reform it and remove the advantage disadvantage feature, I'd love it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's available to anyone to file a property tax credit claim, but
people are sophisticated enough to do that.
Right. Yeah, it's the deadline of having to calculate someone's household income before a preparer needs to really do the heavy lift for the extension deadline is something that's been it's something that's well known how to avoid that in that community. So.
And for folks who are following along on the bill, there's a final section in it that we're going to cover when the administration is ready. That's not covered in this memo. And Representative Demrow is in appropriations right now, tracking the budget adjustment grand launch. And so he'll let us know on Tuesday as part of us talking about budget adjustment. Rebecca, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
This is some funner technical stuff than we usually get, so thank you.
Yeah, we'll slid some policy in there.
And then we are back here after the floor.